Thank you, everyone, for being with us here this afternoon for the forum on preventing gun violence from a faith perspective. My name is John Gregoire, and I am the chapter leader of the James River chapter of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. The tradition for the James River chapter of VICPP is to start off with a prayer for our events. And so Sheila Hurley Hennessy is going to start us off with an opening prayer.
Thank you, John. Let's all take a moment, take a deep breath, and remember that we are in the presence of our loving Creator. It helps now and then to step back and take the long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is another way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No pastoral visit brings wholeness. No advocacy achieves justice. No set of goals and objectives includes everything. This is what we are about. We plant seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future not our own. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Sheila. In 2021, the James River chapter's leadership decided to focus on the issue of gun violence. We partnered with a national organization, RAWtools, to bring hope and healing to people weary of violence. We are committed to protecting our children, our youth, and our communities by preventing gun violence. We are blessed to have with us today Mike Martin, founder of RAWtools, as one of our guest speakers. Last year, the James River chapter sponsored an event, a RAWtools event in Newport News at the St. John's Church of God in Christ. And so Wavy 10 News actually was there and covered the event and included in their program called Taking Back the Community. And so we'd like to play a video of this segment that they did on the event in Newport News for everyone to hear and get a flavor of what RAWtools is about.
Transforming deadly weapons into tools of life. A group of organizations on the peninsula are forging peace to take back the community, and they're doing so in a way that's never been done before in Hampton Roads. 10 Riverside's Michelle Wolf has an exclusive look tonight.
The James River chapter of the Virginia Interfaith Center not only wants to end gun violence, but transform its impact on the community. The center is partnering with RAWtools, a Philadelphia-based organization that takes guns and forges them into garden tools. Transforming weapons that can lead to death into tools of life.
This is what a gun looks like when it gets born again.
An initiative with biblical origins.
Yeah, it really came from that idea of beating swords into plows and spears into pruning hooks. The Bible speaks of that.
Its impact reshaping the Newport News community. and sowing hope where violence bore destruction.
The cycles of violence that entrap us are not all that there is.
Whoever came up with this leg vice was a genius.
The James River chapter of the Virginia Interfaith Center partnered with RAWtools of Philadelphia at St. John's Church of God in Christ in Newport News. Each spark igniting the fire to fight gun violence.
Every time we do it, we're sort of declaring that all things can be made new. That metal can be recrafted, but so can our hearts. You know, hearts that have done violence can be reshaped.
A partnership years in the making.
Oh, this has evolved actually over almost a 2-year period of time.
We are going to be taking an opportunity to give a voice to those who have been impacted by gun violence.
Shane Claiborne, who founded RAWtools, travels all over the country, encouraging folks to take back their neighborhoods. Claiborne says the visits have become cathartic for those who have lost loved ones to gun violence.
We're also honoring people's pain and their grief, the trauma people have experienced.
Claiborne tells 10 on Your Side there's several ways he receives guns, some from the public, others from municipalities and law enforcement.
You know, this isn't just a bunch of folks coming in from out of town, saying a bunch of stuff to make ourselves feel better, and then leaving. This really is about trying to invest in our community here in Newport News.
Keep hope alive. Know that there is a greater power.
These two were made from shotgun barrels.
With a hiss of his forge and the pound of a hammer, Scotty Oots, an Asheville-based blacksmith, turns agents of death into bearers of life.
You know, we come to kind of get behind the community and organizations like the ones that are sponsoring this event today and say, we're with you. And we just bring the forge and say, let's change things.
The James River chapter of the Virginia Interfaith Center tells me the gardening tools created out of surrendered guns will be donated to community gardening initiatives. They also hope to open a RAWtools shop in Hampton Roads like the one in Philadelphia where folks can decommission firearms into gardening tools. Michelle Wolf, 10 on Your Side.
I know.
So just to clarify a few things from the video. So Mike Martin is the founder of RAWtools, and Mike was joined by Shay Claiborne, who founded the Philadelphia RAWtools site. And so we also have another new RAWtools site in RAWtools South, which is founded by the blacksmith that you saw in the video, Scotty Oots, and also Stan Wilson. And then also you'll notice that they had another person identified as John Gregoire. So that was when I had hair and was younger before we started this project. So, but anyway, that was actually Reverend Michael Burnett who was being quoted there, and not myself. So, but did want to make those few clarifications for everyone. So we, along with partnering with RAWtools, we've also recently partnered with the New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence, which was co-founded by Miranda Viscoli, who is our other guest speaker today. So it is our hope and desire that from this forum this afternoon, that we will inspire, encourage, and motivate you to partner with us in this project to bring hope and healing to our communities and turn weapons of destruction and death into tools of life. So with that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Mike Martin and Miranda Viscoli, who are our guest speakers this afternoon. We thank them for being with us today. They've been doing this for quite a while. And so I'm going to turn it over to them and let them share their perspective and experiences on dealing with preventing gun violence in our communities. So Mike and Miranda, it's all yours.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having us here. It really has been a labor of love to get to this point and continuing to communicate with each other. And I gotta say, it's not often we get to work with other organizations like you all who stay in conversation for that long and are really committed to making this work. So I really appreciate everybody's time and efforts who's on the screen, who's been a part of that. And it's fun to do this with Miranda. It's always a good time to kind of conspire with her and the great work that she does down in New Mexico. We've really kind of taught each other a lot of things in this whole process, and so it's always fun to even be in the same Zoom room as Miranda. So yeah, thanks for having us. I'll go first, and then Miranda will follow up there. Sheila, you're welcome to put up that PowerPoint. This or slide deck, as the young ones call it today. It's more of just a loop. I want you to be able to see some of the items like you saw in the video, but also you'll see pictures of people who are part of the process, and that really is a big piece of this. When as places of faith, I think we have a unique space to be able to speak into this that doesn't necessarily pull us out of some kind of political bumper sticker talk, but does allow us to ground it in a different place. And when we center survivors and those who are impacted by gun violence, that brings a whole nother level to it that we don't always get when we're in other spaces. So we started with this idea of turning swords to plowshares in a modern context. And the sword and plowshare in the ancient languages sounded similar or had similar root words. And so it was a play on words in the scriptures. And so to kind of not just turn a gun into a garden tool as a physical modern context of that, but also to use modern language would be to say that semi-automatic to matic. And so that tool with a fork on one side that they're making right now in that picture and a hoe on the other is a matic. And so when we use our current language too to make that play on words, that we're transforming something with the same basic resources into something else, and we have that choice. I love the prayer that we started out with today because it also connects to something that Walter Brueggemann says in his book Prophetic Imagination, that sometimes we can be so overloaded with messages from empire or kind of the American gun culture that it's harder and harder for us to think of alternative ways to find solutions to the epidemic of gun violence. Plus, gun violence is so complicated because it has so many different intersections. If you live in a community where suicide is higher than the national rate, or domestic violence, those have different solutions, or street violence or police violence. They have different solutions to how they need to be fixed. But this, when we kind of gather around the anvil, especially in faith spaces, we can bring those folks at those intersections together and hear from the folks who've been directly impacted and let the survivors lead. And so when we first started doing this, we turned guns into garden tools. We'd go somewhere and make that transformation, but we'd ask someone in the congregation that was hosting us to donate a firearm for that time. And as you can see, it's really accessible to people of all ages to be a part of this. It's really fun to do this. And then when we kind of kept going, we went by word of mouth. We didn't do a whole lot of advertising. People would see it and then they'd come back with their guns after the event. And so it was kind of like a loaves and fishes moment, speaking from my Christian tradition, that it wasn't just this one ask. It was that what is happening, what the survivors are telling, and it's really motivated by the impact that survivors had and saying, like, this happened to me 20 years ago, but it still affects me as if it was yesterday. And so to understand the lasting effects of gun violence in a community is something that we don't get from news clips either. So these events help bring a lot of different people working at the separate intersections of gun violence who may not know each other, because each intersection carries so much, but are able to network and interface together when they host that. And then Shane and I wrote Beating Guns in 2019, and we did a book tour in 37 cities over 40 days during Lent in 2019, and we transformed a gun into a garden tool at each one of those. And at several of those, we got over 12 firearms donated to be transformed that day. And in some locations, that's the amount that might come in at a traditional buyback. So we started to think about larger scale and how we could do this. And that's really where Guns to Gardens started to come into fruition. And then in 2021, there was the mass shooting at the Boulder King Supers here in Colorado. And a few months after that, a church was ready to go. It was a UCC church. And we hosted the first Guns to Gardens event where we combined not just a traditional buyback model where you might have people just standing in line with their guns, ready to turn in, get their gift card and leave. Very clinical, very transactional, not much depth to it outside of someone turning in their firearm. Not even space for them to process what it was like to turn it in, and space for other people to celebrate that someone was turning it in. And so our Guns to Gardens events, they come in all different kinds of formats. The state laws can change a little bit about how they're structured. It's different. Miranda does it a little bit different than we do here in Colorado. In Colorado, we have 40 to 50 volunteers at each event, and we actually have to cut off our volunteer list because people are so eager to keep volunteering. We have to make sure that the people hosting it get that opportunity first before our kind of people who have done it before are invited to volunteer, because so many people want to be a part. So we have people who have been affected by gun violence, helping people turn in their firearms. COVID was a one positive, I would say, out of that is that gun buybacks, you don't stand in line next to each other anymore. There are a lot of drive-throughs. And so people would stay in their vehicles, and we'd have a volunteer, 1 or 2 team of volunteers with each vehicle kind of shepherding them through the whole process. And a lot of times those folks are people who've been impacted by gun violence. So they're thanking folks for turning in their firearms. And then that evokes a story right there. And the people in the car might be telling their story. And that just really speaks to the ability to bring in the dialogue, because we also have volunteers who are helping at these events that are gun owners themselves. They have varying different views on solutions, but they all feel like this is one of the possible ways to address the gun violence in their community. And I'll end with one story here. We had, and this is not out of the norm. It's starting to happen more and more often. Initially, we would target our advertising on Facebook for the events to gun owners, but that changed because that invites a lot of trolls. And the best impact is our advertising person switched it to focusing on women. And that came out in one of our events where a 16-year-old girl for her birthday asked her dad to turn in his firearms at this event. And they were in line. And as we were pulling the firearms out, I was checking them, making sure they were free of ammunition. She started to cry because she didn't think her dad would actually do it. And then the dad started to cry because he didn't realize the impact it had, that he was actually doing what his daughter asked to do. And so she got the gift cards for her birthday that day. And he turned in his guns. She got the gift cards. But I think the real value, the real gift there was that he listened to her and turned in firearms that she wasn't comfortable with him having. And so that speaks to that, there's this intergenerational thing happening as we shift. I think post-Parkland especially, we're seeing that more often. And so as we continue to do Guns to Gardens events, we've done about 17 or 18, I think, here in Colorado since then. And Miranda has also done a lot. So I'll let you share a bit about your experience.
Thank you, Mike. It's been an honor to partner with Mike, I think since 2016. He's put up with me so that he should get a medal for that. I really want to thank everybody also in Virginia and how much you guys care about moving Guns to Gardens forward. And I also want to clarify something. I'm the co-founder with Dr. Reverend Harry Aberts. He's our Presbyterian pastor here in Santa Fe, where I live, but I work in Albuquerque, where the majority of gun violence is in New Mexico. I'm going to speak more on the advocacy side and then how we've grown Guns to Gardens into a youth program. The majority of the work we do at New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence is with our young people. We do some policy in terms of legislation, but we see how much our youth are impacted by it. We began the Guns to Gardens program for a very specific reason. It was a need in our community. So in New Mexico, we care more about guns than people in New Mexico sometimes. And so there was a law in the books that said, if you have a firearm that you don't want, you can't just bring it to the police department, because the police have to get this, a court order of destruction to destroy the gun, and then have a historian to come in and make sure it's not a historic relic. So you can imagine a police department or a sheriff's office is gonna say, no, we don't have time for that, right? And so we saw a real need in our community where people had no way to turn in those unwanted guns. And New Mexico is awash in guns. It was very hard to get that first gun buyback. It took me 1.5 years of fighting for it with the AG's office, a mayor who's sadly no longer with us, Mayor Javier Gonzalez. He fought so hard to make guns to gardens happen in New Mexico. And I tell this to you only because no matter how hard it is in your community, just don't give up. Don't take no for an answer. Don't give them an inch and get there. And we're happy to help you get there because we learned how to navigate. Mike was there throughout the whole thing. It's like, Mike, now what do I do? What do I do now? And so we broke the nut. I knew if we got one in New Mexico, we could continue to go. We're about to do we just did our 18th gun buyback. We're about to do our 19th gun buyback in New Mexico on June 29th. To date, we've dismantled over 2,600 guns, with the majority being semi-automatics and assault weapons, which when people say gun buybacks don't work, well, they do. We're taking those very dangerous weapons out of circulation. In addition to that, our anonymous survey tells us that the majority of people are doing so for safety reasons. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice because I've been sick for over a week. Mike said to you, the anecdotal stories we hear tell us how important this is for our communities. Sadly, we've seen it too many times where a mom brings the gun in the evidence box that was used in a suicide, right? Why would you ever want to sell that firearm? Ever, right? And so we do hear those stories, and we do see the gratefulness or the gratitude on people's faces when they're turning in firearms. People are literally in tears saying, thank you. I did not know what to do with this firearm, and I couldn't keep it safe. And we hear it every other car, they're telling us this, right? We do get a lot of blowback in New Mexico. ATF came after us hard. Mike walked us through it. There are people that want to see us gone, and we keep at it. Right now, luckily, we have an AG that's on our side. When we don't have an AG on our side, I don't know where Guns to Gardens will go. So then I want to veer now to the work we've now taken Guns to Gardens in terms of working with youth. So in a second, I'll have Sheila pull up a 2-minute short film. The young people who are now forging our guns into gardening tools are young people who are very impacted by gun violence. So we work closely with RFK Charter High School and middle school, but not for this program, in Albuquerque. This is a school that has seen a lot of gun violence. They lose usually 1 to 2 kids every year. They also are the school that takes the kids in who have committed gun violence, because they believe that those kids shouldn't be thrown out on the streets, and we wholeheartedly agree. So it was a perfect partnership. So now every other Tuesday, we have an artist, local artist, Jeremy Thomas, who's teaching the kids how to forge. You'll see in the film you're about to see that they took it on themselves to make a xylophone and electric guitar. They also worked with Pedro Reyes, the Mexican artist. We had a partnership with him as well. This summer, they're making big insects and bees for gardens. And so it's been a really amazing transformative process for these young people, and we continue to grow that. So Sheila, with that, I will have you pop up this film. And while she's bringing that up, the exciting thing is that the young student who made this film didn't know how to make a film. He did this on his own, and it just won its 2nd award. And this will help get him into film school.
This last summer, some special students from RFK did something magical. They weren't at home playing games or getting into trouble. Instead, they were taking chopped up gun parts and turning them into masterpieces. But one specifically seems to stand out far above the rest: the xylophone. It is made entirely of the parts they get from the gun buyback, where the Mexicans to prevent gun violence give out gift cards to anyone who brings in a gun to get chopped up. This xylophone represents the beauty we can make with these guns. They don't need to be just another unwanted firearm that could be stolen and used to kill. Instead, we chop them up and turn them into something inspiring and beautiful. Because we are not all criminals. Most of us just want to wake up to a better tomorrow. So I hope our work on this xylophone inspires people to lead, because we didn't have any blueprints on how to make a xylophone out of gun parts. We had to lead our own path and just find a way. And yeah, there were times when I felt like it was all too much work and we didn't know if it would even be worth the effort. But we never stopped. And now, after all this work on this xylophone and seeing it put together, it truly is breathtaking. Because now every weld, every grind, and every hammer has come to life. All the effort has come together for everyone to see. Because we didn't just make the xylophone. We also made a working electric guitar in those 3 months over the summer. There is something so surreal about taking gun parts and making musical instruments out of them. Maybe it's the beauty in the message, or maybe it's the peace in knowing someone's doing something. Our school lost 2 students to gun violence last year, which is what sparked this movement. Their death inspires students to try and do something. Now we can point at this xylophone and say we did.
So I think that film is an example of how our young people can be a part of the healing process. And the 2 kids they lost, you saw a community broken, and then you saw these young people on their own during the summer, wanting to just create something in honor of them. And I will end it on this, which I hope, Mike, you're okay with this. What I find interesting also about the xylophone is that ATF wanted to bang down my door and end New Mexicans to prevent gun violence because of that AK-47 on the left of the screen, where the receiver is completely decimated. And I think we have to ask ourselves why ATF would be so concerned about what we're doing when they're supposed to go after human trafficking in New Mexico. And I think that's not an example of how hard and I want to say the fight in a good way, in a positive way, how hard the fight can be when people are trying to stop the good work that all of us are doing, right? And we can't let that kind of voice get in the way. So I will leave it at that, and then if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Miranda. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask people to put their questions in the chat room for the next couple of minutes. If you have a question for Miranda and for Mike, go ahead and raise your hand and Sheila will call on you.
I can answer a few that have been in the chat already, because they kind of all blend together. People have asked if there's a RAWtools shop in Virginia. There isn't. We do have a large blacksmith network, and we have a blacksmith in Harrisonburg and some other nearby places, depending on where you're at. So if you're needing a blacksmith connection, you're welcome to contact me, and I can help make that happen. It really can be different depending on the state. Right now, the RAWtools South location is probably closest to you. Maybe Shane and Philly, you guys might actually be in between the two. But we try, our RAWtools affiliates across the country are being built to set up and support Guns to Gardens programming in their region. And then there's a question about the Guns to Gardens nonprofit status. So that you probably looked based on your question there, if right when the website was being transitioned. So Guns to Gardens was a national kind of organic collaborative between RAWtools, New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence, Swords to Plowshares Northeast, Presbyterian Peace Fellowship, and some others, Gun by Gun. So now it's become an official program of RAWtools. And so if you go to gunstogardens.org or .com, it'll actually redirect you to the RAWtools website where our Guns to Gardens network is, and you can find out information there. As far as matching contributions through employers, depending on what programs people use, we have set up through different organizations like Benevity. Depending, you can let me know, and I can also help set that up. It would go through RAWtools, and it can be designated to Guns to Gardens. However, we highly recommend, if a Guns to Gardens event is happening in your area, that you donate to the host church for that instead of passing it through us. We want to keep everything as local as possible. If you want to make a generic donation to RAWtools, that's fine. I'm not going to argue with you on that. But if you want to support your local Guns to Gardens piece, then do it through your local host. That will keep the paper trail the shortest and provide more impact.
Great.
We have a few
There
more
was
minutes to take some other questions.
There was one other question in the chat. Are there regular gun buyback programs in Virginia? Are they only done through the police, or can organizations sponsor them? The shortest answer to that question is the most common gun buybacks in Virginia are done through police and local government. However, as you saw right at the beginning, that event that happened in Newport News last year, the Virginia Interfaith Center and some of our network are working to bring about some more of these kind of Guns to Garden events, safe surrender events, whether they be full-on gun buybacks or something a little more mission-driven. A little bit of both is happening. Unfortunately, they're not like regular. There's no unified place to see every safe surrender or gun buyback event in the state at once, but we are working to make more of those accessible.
Sheila, I'd just like to add to that. We are in the process of scheduling a Guns to Garden event in September of this year. So we are in the process of identifying a church that is willing to partner with us to host a Guns to Garden event. So if anybody on this forum represent or is with a congregation that they think might be interested in partnering with us for a Guns to Garden event in September, we would love to hear from you. And also, looking further down the road, it is our plan to have a location in place where people can donate guns. And we want to qualify, these are unwanted guns from the community. So it's an opportunity for people from the community to donate their unwanted guns, to have them dismantled and the parts used for works of art, garden tools, etc. So we hope to have a location in place where it's more of a permanent location for people to donate guns from the community. And then also ultimately, we would love to be able to do like RAWtools South and some of the other affiliates for RAWtools and have a established blacksmith here in our area to turn the parts into garden tools, etc. So anyway, that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of our grand vision that we have for our location. But it's a great question, and thank you for asking that.
John?
Yes.
Yes, there are a couple more, well, actually 3 or 4 more questions. I'm just going to throw them out, and maybe anyone who has the answer to those could let us know. One of the participants, Sarah, asked, there are many initiatives for gun buybacks in Virginia. Can you tell us if there is any way to transport to a Guns to Gardens facility? Not sure, might need some clarification on the transport part, but that was one question.
Well, I just want to clarify, I'm not aware of a lot of Guns to Garden events here in the state of Virginia. If we could be educated on that would be, or some. So is that you, Mike?
So there's currently a website that's being rebuilt to list all current or upcoming Guns to Gardens events, but there isn't like a permanent location unless a church becomes a part of, we used to call it the disarming network. Within RAWtools, we're renaming it or combining our personal, our network of individuals who have signed up to help people destroy firearms before the Guns to Gardens events was created. Now it's all the Guns to Gardens network, where if you can go to the RAWtools website and fill out a form to donate a gun if you don't want to wait for an event to happen, and we would connect you with volunteers, some of which who might have already hosted Guns to Gardens events depending on what part of the country you're in, and we can have them usually meet at like a church parking lot and destroy the firearm there. Or if you're already planning an event and it's coming up soon, we recommend people to attend those. The other kind of questions here in the chat were about how law enforcement plays a role and approximate cost. One of the things, one of our partners, Presbyterian Peace Fellowship, holds action circles. If you go to the Presbyterian Peace Fellowship website, you can sign up for those action circles. They're 5 meetings, 1 hour long a piece, that goes over the logistics of what it's like to host a Guns to Gardens event. Some of the people on this call have already been a part of that. And the cost will depend kind of on the capacity that you have and kind of how you want to do it. Insurance could be a little bit of that. I'm not going to get into the weeds on that, but I'm happy to talk to folks about that when you start planning events. And then how you work in law enforcement is different. And maybe Miranda, you could share about how you work in New Mexico, because you work with law enforcement in New Mexico and I don't. So I'll let Miranda go first to kind of talk about how that works for you all.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And if anybody has any questions, reach out to me. So we do ours with law enforcement for a couple of reasons. One, our board wasn't comfortable not to, but I love what Mike is doing in Colorado without law enforcement. I think that's amazing. But my board wants us to stay doing this with law enforcement. Also, the AG just came out with an opinion saying if we want to do gun buybacks, they have to be with law enforcement. So basically, law enforcement takes the gun out of the trunk. They make sure it's not loaded. We do a triple check on that because law enforcement has missed quite a few bullets in our firearms. And then run the gun through NCIC. That's what we call here to see if the gun was stolen or was an evidence gun. We have taken in over 2,500 guns we've taken in, maybe 12 were stolen. Those will go back to the rightful owner if they can find them. They were usually stolen years ago. So they have no idea that they were stolen. We've never gotten an evidence gun because I don't think any criminal would want to use a gun in a crime and then go get their Target gift card. And then while they're being run, we give the people their gift cards and they're on their merry way. We've had a really good partnership with law enforcement, and I do think it gives us an opportunity for more community policing and for us we have to work with law enforcement in New Mexico in a positive way on many levels, because we've had such an issue, especially in Albuquerque, that this gives an opportunity to kind of create a healthy relationship, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we either do sheriff's offices or police departments.
In Colorado, we have the support often through funding from law enforcement or a division of like a city budget that is maybe not necessarily directly through law enforcement, but might be like in Denver, they call it the Office of Community Violence Solutions. And it's where the only thing I recommend is not working with funds from elected officials, because they'll twist your narrative faster than you want, and then it's never your narrative anymore. It doesn't mean that you don't agree with the policies that they're putting through, but it does mean that the event often just isn't yours anymore. And so when we started it, in Colorado, we have universal background check laws. And so the way we do it without law enforcement is that people turning in firearms have to stay in the presence of the firearm as we destroy it, so that when they leave, they're not giving us a firearm. It's already been destroyed. And we're not giving them gift cards for a firearm. We're giving them gift cards as a thank you, because now we just have a bunch of scrap metal and wood and plastic. So there's no legal transfer of ownership when we do it, when we destroy it in their presence. That does mean that the line could get a little bit long if you have someone that brings in a big batch of firearms, where Miranda is able to, people can leave the second they get rid of their firearms and get their gift cards, because the law enforcement acts essentially like a licensed firearm dealer in that case. If you work without law enforcement, you do need to have liability insurance, especially if you're getting funds, grant funds that require that. There are churches that do this without liability insurance with all of their own funds. And essentially they're saying that the people who are participating in the event, or the volunteers who are making it happen, are taking that risk upon themselves if something were to happen. So it doesn't mean you can't do it. I'm more and more convinced that the most kind of prophetic work is where liability insurance doesn't go. And sometimes you might need to provide a proof of concept before that's accepted. And I've been probably the thing that has made me want to quit the most is conversations about liability insurance in all this. It's not the political stuff. It's not the other, it's trying to find people who are familiar, and it's all relational. So if your agent is familiar with firearms, you have a better likelihood of getting that kind of coverage that you need, because they know that it's not the risk in their portfolio that other agents might think. So there's a lot of different layers to doing this without law enforcement, but a lot of that is covered in those Presbyterian Peace Fellowship action circles. And they go through a lot of different pieces. The question about how much it costs, I start out with $10,000 just as a general start. We've done firearm stuff where we only gave out $5,000 in gift cards, but people refused almost $4,000 in gift cards. They were just happy to get rid of their firearm, because it is hard to get rid of. And so you'll see a lot of people kind of paying it forward by giving you back the gift cards sometimes. But 10,000 is a great number to start with. I think it covers a lot of your logistics if you're doing everything with volunteers, and that food, posters, signs, advertising, that kind of stuff. But then also your gift cards are your biggest expense. And if you run out of gift cards, that's a great thing to say, like, hey, our community really wants this. Let's do it again.
Thank you, Mike and Miranda, on the feedback regarding the law enforcement piece and recommendations as far as the gift cards. I have invited a couple of people to talk about their personal experiences regarding the impact that gun violence has had on their personal life. So I invited Pastor Phil Kuehnerd to join us and share his story. Now, Pastor Phil Kuehnerd has been, he's a reverend, and he's pastored many churches across the country, in Alaska and Atlanta, and also here in the Williamsburg area at King of Glory. And so he is about to take a flight from Black Mountain, North Carolina to Charlotte, Virginia. And so before he leaves, I wanted him to have an opportunity to share his story with everyone. And then we'll have our other guest that we invited, Monica Atkins, share her personal story as well. So with that being said, Pastor Phil, are you able to hear us and talk to us?
Yes, I am.
There he is. Okay. So without further ado, Reverend Phil Kuehnerd, we will turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you, and nice meeting. My story is very, very old. In 1972, I was the victim in a holdup, was shot twice. By a miracle, I survived the 2 bullets. One went through my thigh, the other went through my pelvic girdle. And if you look at a skeleton, there's one place where you can stick a rod through the pelvic girdle and not hit a bone, and that's where the bullet went. It was also an old-fashioned bullet that didn't tumble or disintegrate, so it passed straight through, severing the vena cava through and through of the colon, and also then through the bladder. Since then, it's been, I've had very little physical reactions to it. I have a quite a startled reflex that stems back to that. So whenever there is a loud noise, I go, yikes. And then the other thing is because of the extensive surgery producing adhesions, I've had bowel blockages. I became quite active 6 years ago with about the effort to pass public policy legislation that would provide safe, would provide boundaries where the lethal effect of assault type of weapons and gun access would be, sorry about that. And so in terms of the theological or the religious, or as a pastor, I really feel that I am where the meteorologists are in Miami today. If you read the New York Times, the meteorologist in Miami with Governor DeSantis has decided that the best way to forward what they're so concerned about in terms of the excessive heat is to vote. And that's where I am right now. I will certainly do what I can in terms of my voting and also in terms of helping at the assembly level. But that's, I think as Christians, as religious leaders, we encourage our people to vote. Thanks.
Thanks, Pastor Phil. Safe travels.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being on. So we'll talk soon. Thank you.
Okay, you're right.
So with that being said, let's move on to, like to have Monica Atkins come on and share her personal story. And also Monica started an organization called Stop the Violence 757. And so we appreciate you, Monica, being here with us this afternoon to share your story about gun violence and how it's impacted your life. So with that, Monica, I will turn it over to you.
Greetings, everyone. How you doing? My name is Monica Atkins, and back in 2013, I was a part of a call to action to end gun violence where I lost my cousin. Not prior to 2014 is when I lost my son. So I'm a person that's big about community, and I'm a person that's big about family. So I started this nonprofit called Stop the Violence 757, which is our mission is to spread awareness and educate the communities about the senseless acts of gun violence. So what we do is we are not individuals that's inside a building. We're outside the four walls where June is National Awareness Day for Gun Violence. We pay it forward and we feature loved ones that's lost their lives to gun violence. And the reason for that, maybe some individuals like myself don't have closure, and maybe that's a way to just prick somebody. If you know something, say something. We do a gala catered to individual parents that lost loved ones. We acknowledge grassroots organizations that's out here that's really doing the work to save our community. We do a school drive, and we do the trunk or treat. We also facilitate 2 after-school programs in the city of Portsmouth. And this is our 3rd year. And starting in September of this year, I will be the facilitator. I'm the coordinator for Kids in Grief. They do have it in the Newport News area. I had so many families reached out to me about having services put in place for their kids. So Bonds and Secours was able to get a grant, which will cover me being the coordinator, because I understand us as parents grieve, but we also, sometimes we overlook that our children are grieving too. And just 6 months ago, I lost my niece to gun violence. My niece was sitting in her car and she heard gunshots and she made a right turn and she was shot. My niece leave behind a 10-year-old and a 2-year-old who my sister is raising. So, I'm constantly grieving that, even with grieving the loss of my son, but I think for far as me dealing with it, I shows up, far as try to be a support system or to do what I can do to be the change in the community, So I am I am a grassroots, and I am hands on the ground. I do a lot in the city of Portsmouth, and not just the city of Portsmouth. When I'm asked to come out to other cities to speak, I also do my work, and I'm big on partnership, because I tell people that it's all about connecting, and it's components into saving this community, and everybody have a part to play. So that's my story.
Thank you, Monica. We appreciate you sharing your personal story with us, and it certainly is filled with a lot of loss. And so our hearts go out to you, and thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
So as you can see, just to expand a little bit on what Monica is talking about, we wanted to have an opportunity to share at the local level some of the pain and the tragic loss that our communities experience. Nationally, we lose 40,000 people to gun violence every year. And that does not include, like we heard earlier from Pastor Phil Kuehnerd, people who survive gun violence, that their lives are changed physically and emotionally. And but the good news is that there is hope. And so there are many organizations at all levels that are willing to fight and to stop this madness that we are experiencing. It's gotten to a point where guns are a form of idolatry in this country. And so we want to put God before guns. So I would like to introduce you to Dina Mohler, and I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, Dina. And I invited Dina to join us because they had a successful Guns to Garden program in Charleston, West Virginia. Dina's going to talk to us for a few minutes about the Guns to Garden program and their experience. And so, Dina, I will turn it over to you to share your experience with us.
Okay, I'll make it as brief as possible, and Stan will keep me honest because he was part of it. Robert and Sarah Gottlieb and I are members of Moms Demand Action, and Moms is not all about the Guns to Gardens program. They consider it a buyback, and that was a big disappointment to Robert and Sarah and me. We had participated in the Action Circle, and we were really excited about Guns to Gardens, thinking we could make it part of the Wear Orange program in June, that it would be a really good fit, and we got shut down. So we just decided to do it on our own. I go to First Presbyterian, Sarah goes to Village Chapel Presbyterian, and Robert is not affiliated with any kind of religion. So we just started approaching churches, and First Presby was very supportive financially. Village Chapel agreed to be the money people, and we approached St. Mark's Methodist Church because they had an awesome parking lot. They had this huge open parking lot that was very good visual lines, and they're Methodist, so they participated. And we got a lot of support from the community. Once you explain, West Virginia, you can't get much redder than West Virginia. You can't find people that have more guns than people in West Virginia. But once you explain that you're not trying to rip someone's guns out of their hands, that this is a service that you're performing for folks who don't have an avenue for disposing of a gun in a safe manner, we had a lot of support. We spoke to a lot of churches. We had great publicity. Our newspapers were behind us. We were on the radio. And we raised $10,000. Sarah got a grant that covered RAWtools. And I have to say that I don't know how you put on an event like this the first time without having RAWtools at your back, because Scotty and Stan were awesome. They came with all the equipment. They came with all the expertise. And it was a soup to nuts kind of thing, you know, getting it all set up. And they just gave us a lot of positive reinforcement, which is what we needed. Mike talked about volunteers. We had to turn volunteers away. We had, you know, we were advised to have maybe like 30 people around, and we were turning people away. We learned a lot with the first one. We chopped up 27 guns. 7 were semi-automatics, 1 assault rifle, and people were bringing them in because somebody in their family had dementia now and they didn't feel safe. They'd inherited the guns. They didn't ever want the guns. A lot of them felt like the guns were unsafe and old. They didn't know how to, you know, handle the guns. So, and we had one couple that wouldn't tell us why they were bringing it in, but they videoed the gun being chopped up. So we had very positive interaction with the police. We did not have a police presence, but they were aware of it and they were patrolling close by. I had the cell phone number of one of them. In the event that we had any issues, they would have been right there. We did record serial numbers. The police have not asked for them. We didn't have any pushback from ATF. So it was, all in all, it was very positive. The city of Charleston was very enthusiastic about it. And we're gearing up to do it again next year, Stan, by the way. And we, May 3rd, put it on your calendar, Derby Day. So that's our story.
Thank you, Dina. That's really good insight and good feedback regarding as we plan our program here in September. So appreciate you being with us today and sharing your experience. So we are coming to the ending of our forum, our program. So Sheila, do we have the Presbyterian toolkit for congregations?
Yes. So you want to screen share that? Yes.
Real quick.
You got it. Mm-hmm.
So the Presbyterian Peace Fellowship has a website, and they have this gun violence prevention congregational toolkit. And I really wanted to have an opportunity to share this with everybody, because inside you can get it as a PDF file, and it has a wealth of information, soup to nuts, as far as things that you can do for your congregation to get involved with preventing gun violence. And it has guides and curriculums for doing groups. And so can you get the table of contents up for us, Sheila?
You got it.
Just kind of give you a breadth of and the in-depth information that's available to congregations and all the different types of things they can get involved in. So bottom line is that there's a lot of resources available to us in the community. And so I encourage you to take advantage of that. As I mentioned, if anybody is interested in a Guns to Garden program, a church, a congregation, please get in touch with me, John Gregoire, and I'll have my email website, not my website, but my email available, and we can make sure that we have an opportunity to meet and discuss this in further detail. So Mike and Miranda, anything else you'd like to add before we close out with our benediction?
No, just if anybody, sorry, keep taking on my camera because I keep coughing. If anybody has any questions, just feel free to email me. And I'll also put the link to the xylophone film. And then there's a film short we made on Guns to Gardens. And feel free to use those and share those as much as you want.
Thank you, Miranda. Mike?
Thanks everyone for having us. Happy to stay in touch as needed, and be happy to answer any questions as you start planning and taking action in the Guns to Garden space or other places where you're centering survivors.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So we're going to have our benediction given today by the Reverend Dr. Anthony Flood. So Dr. Flood, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you, John, for your leadership in the James River chapter in bringing us together to discuss preventing violence from a faith perspective. And we are grateful for the speakers that you've had on our program today. Let us pray. As people of faith, in our faithfulness to a just cause, let the experience we have had this moment remind us of the great work ahead of us. Let us collectively continue to create spaces of refuge, safety, and care from the violence that is deeply rooted in the causes of so many miseries. God of courage, inspire our heart, a broken heart, and enable us in our benediction to invoke your divine help, blessings, and guardians in carrying forth this work into the coming future, and that we all work towards charity of hearts, toward justice, justice of the joy of things put right, and out of our hands toward the work of peace, knowing that you are the one who will judge the nation and rebuke many, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. This is our prayer. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Anthony Flood. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. And we look forward to keeping in touch and contacting those of you that are interested in the Guns to Garden program. So with that, thank you and hope you have a good rest of the day.